just bear with me. I'm turning YouTube on and then we'll get started. Okay, good. I'm just gonna mute YouTube for myself, so. Okay, I'm a little out of practice here. Good evening, everybody. This is the Wednesday, November 4th, 2020 regular town council meeting for the town of Scarborough. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 3 is roll call. Tom, I will ask you to do the roll call.
Councillor Clucci?
Here.
Councillor Hayes?
Here.
Councillor Gleisteen?
Here.
Councillor Katarina?
Here.
Councillor Johnson?
Here.
Councillor Hamel?
Here.
Chairman Johnson?
Here. Item number 4 is general public comments. There appears to be nobody physically with us today. There are several members in the virtual audience. If you would like to raise your hand. If you have any general public comments about items, or excuse me, things that are not on the agenda. No? Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Pelletier, I'm going to allow you to, oh, hold on. Yep. Ms. Pelletier, I'm going to allow you to speak. Just go ahead and unmute yourself.
Could I make a comment about the October 21st meeting?
You sure can. Yep.
Okay, so first I would like to answer a couple questions about that was brought up at that meeting. First thing is that we started renting space to cannabis growers of January of 2012. And we have 14 grow operations in 10 and 20 Snow Canning Road. Also, our last renter was in 2014. So we have been at full capacity since 2014. So to carry on, I'm not going to deny that there is a marijuana odor that comes from the building, but there is also a seafood urchin processing odor and a marsh odor. And during the ordinance committee meeting, the odor mitigation part of it was a priority, but was also discussed that odor was a personal objective. And what stinks to one person doesn't mean that it stinks to everyone else. And that it would be a hard thing, it would be a hard thing to control. So, such as the comment that was made by the Holly Street resident. They like the seafood processing odor, but the person that lives across the road from them has made numerous complaints about the seafood processing odor. The only thing that I ask is that, first of all, I don't want to be a bad neighbor. As a landlord and as a family member of the landlord, we were never bad neighbors. We've always worked with them. We've always worked with the town and had done everything that the town has ever requested us to do. I am only asking for some guidance from the town so that we can work together to find a solution to this issue. That is it.
Thank you, Shelley. Are there any others in the audience that have general public comments for items that are not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we're on to item number 5, which is the approval of the October 21st, 2020 town council minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Peter. Discussion? Okay, Tom, do you want to call the vote?
Councillor Clucci?
Yes.
Councillor Hayes?
Yes.
Councillor Gleisteen?
Yes.
Councillor Katarina?
Yes.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
Councillor Hamel?
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson?
Yes. Okay, great. Item number 7 is treasurer's warrants. I'll take care of those later. Item number 8 is the town manager's report. So Mr. Hall, would you like to
Yes.
give your town manager's report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A number of points I'd like to touch on this evening. First and foremost, regarding voting, I spent more time at the polls yesterday than I normally did. I'm not sure exactly why, but I really had, with that, a very good perspective on kind of how the day went. First and foremost, I want to thank the workers. They were really valiant through the entire day, some of whom were there for 18 hours, really a heroic effort. And certainly the voters as well. I viewed and witnessed incredible patience in compliance. In fact, over the course of my 8 or 9 hours being at the polls, I only saw one person without a face covering. And I believe she had a medical exemption for not having it. So it was just a tremendous outpouring of community, and very thankful for how it went. We did end up with a fairly late night. There were no problems with the voting machines. The tally work often takes much longer than is ever intended. And our intrepid town clerk and the election warden were here till about 5 in the morning, doing just the fine detail of chasing down the few ballots that just to make sure that all the reporting was accurate. And that's really the character of Tody and what she models to all her staff and volunteers. So a great success, and we'll get into some of the particulars of how successful that was in terms of voter turnout later in the meeting as well. With regard to the COVID issues and precautions, I think we're all aware and witnessing that the state is kind of moving in a different direction, maybe a bit of a troubling direction. We've seen this for a couple of weeks, and we're redoubling our efforts here at Town Hall. You may have noticed we did a special edition of the e-newsletter last week devoted to the subject, and are starting to get some good traction with that, and we'll continue those efforts. We're also instituting some additional protocols for town staff. Public safety, since the beginning, has been doing temperature checks for all staff coming on duty, and we'll be instituting the same for public works staff. This is in total cooperation with them. We're working through the finer points of that, but as we enter the winter maintenance season, we can't do with one person out, frankly. That means a plow run doesn't get plowed, much less 2 or 3. And so we're trying to take this very, very seriously. We're also, or will be in possession of some of the Vinex rapid tests, and these will our staff through public safety will be capable of administering those to staff as needed. And I guess lastly, as a precaution, we're doing a flu clinic for all staff next week. So we're trying to do our part to take care of ourselves and our families, and encourage our residents certainly do the same. One topic that I've heard pretty consistently over the last 4 or 5 weeks, or months rather, and perhaps you have as well, is apparently cell service in town, particularly with AT&T, I believe, is become quite poor. In fact, it's been reported to me, and a week doesn't go by where I don't have a resident that comes really pleading for help. That right here in Oak Hill, our center of our commerce and civic activity, you simply can't get a signal, and that is just baffling to me. I don't have an explanation for that, but apparently the service has diminished considerably. I'm pleased to report that AT&T we've been working with, and I'm hopeful that they will co-locate on our communications tower out here, and I'll continue to update you. I don't want to get anyone's hopes up immediately, but we're having very productive conversations with them. So that's good news. Also, just kind of a housekeeping matter. You might recall the planning board agenda has been fairly robust, really since things opened back up in the spring, partially due to a backup with the pandemic, but also just brisk development activity. They took it upon themselves to schedule an extra meeting. They essentially continued a meeting and had that follow-up this past week, and effectively have moved through the backlog. So staff is hopeful, and I think the planning board members are hopeful that they'll be able to kind of manage things going forward. So I really credit them for another long night, but I think we're in a good spot at this point. As a corollary to that, staff is working on the administrative review, and we'll be bringing something for you for your consideration, or at least discussion, hopefully later in this month, and with the hope of getting something done by the end of the year. Again, housekeeping items. We continue to solicit membership for our ad hoc committees. This is for a downtown committee and a charter review committee. We have kind of a self-imposed deadline through Monday, November 9th. And we'll be doing some additional social media blasts to try to generate some last minute interest. If you have any interested parties, certainly put them in touch with me, or they can go online on our website and find out how to submit their name for consideration. Council Chair, I think, is going to speak later perhaps about how we're going to, the timing of appointments, but I think we're going to look for a special meeting sometime next week. November 12th seems to be the date that is working well for our schedule here at Town Hall, with the hope of doing final appointments on November 18th, so these committees can actually get up and running in the month of December. Planning board questions, excuse me, comprehensive plan questions. I appreciate council members taking the time to provide your questions, comments, concerns to the current draft. Staff has those and are reviewing those. And the intent is, I believe, to have a workshop on November 18th to really kind of work through those issues and try to focus, what the collective concerns of council are. This is following a kind of a parallel path with the Long Range Planning Committee, who is reintroducing the plan to the community over the course of the next 5 to 6 weeks. Pleased to hear Ms. Pelletier's comments in public comment. Staff has actually had some very productive conversations with a town resident who happens to be a worldwide expert on odor. And I had the occasion to work with him in a prior position I held. I made contact with him. We met with him this week, and we're working through a scope of work, but we'd actually like to contract him for our own purposes to actually have him go visit these sites. Our staff is looking and visiting these sites as has been reported to you in the past, but he is a trained eye, and he'll be able to provide us a more detailed assessment of what are the mitigation systems in place in each of these facilities. And I think that's going to establish a really healthy baseline. And I'm pleased to hear Ms. Pelletier's willingness to be cooperative and to work toward a solution here. Don't know what that is, but I think surrounding ourselves with good information from local experts can only help. Some good news with health premiums. We did get a notice in last week. You may recall that we had anticipated a 10% increase on our health insurance premiums. They came in at 2%. That equates to a $90,000 savings in our budget, which is very good news. The directors of the Health Trust used some reserves to help keep those rates as low as possible. So they're masking a bit of our experience. I think 10% would have been a pretty good estimate, frankly, maybe even a little low if it simply went based on our community rating and our experience, but I'm certainly pleased with that news. And I guess lastly, you might be interested to know, late last week, we issued our final growth permit. So we've exhausted the allocation for this current calendar year. It's unknown to me at this point whether that's problematic over the last 60 days. But that's the first occurrence to my knowledge that we've actually reached the point of exhausting the annual allocation. And I guess the final point is more personal. I want to congratulate all the candidates that ran for public office. It takes courage and commitment to even put your name out there. And certainly to those that won, I look forward to working, continuing work with John and Jean Marie and Mr. Anderson. And lastly, if I could, I certainly want to acknowledge and thank Peter Hayes. Peter and I worked 6 years together, and I very much appreciate his wise counsel. And Peter, you certainly left your mark on this organization, and I think a lot of the systems and thoughts that you've espoused through the years consistently, I think will be around to stay. So you're to be congratulated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm available for questions if you have them.
Any questions for Tom? Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom? No? Okay. I will now move on to order number 20088, which is a public hearing only on a proposed amendment to the zoning map relating to the rezoning of Muzzy Road. And I believe there's this is just a public hearing. It's not our action. But I believe Mr. Bushy is in the audience. Excuse me. I just clicked the wrong thing. So I think as part of this public hearing, I will have Mr. Bushy just give us a brief presentation. And Stephen, do you need to share your screen or anything, or?
No, I don't think so,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I assume you can hear me well enough. Thank you for this opportunity. We're here before you requesting a zone change for a piece of property at 103 Muzzy, roughly a 4-acre parcel on Muzzy Road, just east of the Gallery Boulevard intersection. The piece of property is owned by Transport Leasing, has been owned for many years. We appeared before you folks a number of weeks ago, and most recently we were before the planning board last week, in which the planning board did provide, I believe, a positive recommendation for our zone request from the B3 to the industrial zone. As a point, based on our last discussion, I think there may have been a request or a question in regards to the property in the earlier zoning. The property had been in the industrial zone back in 2009, and at that time it had been changed to the B3. I did have the opportunity to get the old zoning map, and so there were a number of properties, I think 5 or 6 properties further west of this site, as well as the property behind the site that were all in the industrial zone. And those lots along the Muzzy Street frontage got changed to the B3, and the B3 ended at Nielsen Road and continued on in to be industrial where Postal Way is and so forth. Behind that industrial property had been changed to, I believe, the Village Central 2, if that would, I may be incorrect, but it got changed to a residential. But that all had been in 2009 in the industrial zone. So we're looking to rezone the current property that Transport Leasing owns, simply because they have the prospects for development in the categories of mini warehouse, warehouse, and recycling, which fit under the industrial zoning categories as permitted uses, are certainly where they're looking to go. They have interest in, we have provided basically a preliminary site plan if this zoning were to be enacted that would allow for basically a 14,000 square foot building on that property for those uses. So that's where we're at. We appreciate your thoughts and consideration tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Bushy since he's up here? I know this is not our action, but he is visiting us, so we might take advantage of it. Any? Okay, I'm going to put you right back in the audience. Thank you very much. If you are a member of the public wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move on. We're now on to order number 20096, which is the 7 p.m. public hearing and its action on a request for a new food handler's license from the following establishments. Number 1 is Michael J. Foley, DBA Foley's Fitness Center, located at 33 Higas Parkway, formerly the Smoothie Doctor. Number 2 is C.N. Brown Company, DBA The Big Apple Food Store in Scarborough, located at 230 US Route 1, which is the former Citgo right up there at the intersection. So this is a public hearing. Before I do so, Tom, did you want to tee it up a little bit?
Simply, the town clerk has said that applications are on file, and she does recommend approval of these licenses. I would note C.N. Brown, this is the Citgo here in Oak Hill, change of ownership, and it will become a Big Apple food store and gas station. But the Brady family has been an institution in town. I think it's been owned something over 40 years by that family. So quite a big change right here in Oak Hill.
Thank you. Any members of the public wish to speak to this? None? So can I get a motion from one of us?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, Tom, you want to call the vote?
Councilor Calucci.
Yes.
Councilor Hayes.
Yes.
Councilor Johnson.
Yes.
Sorry. Councilor Gleisten.
Yes.
Councilor Katarina.
Yes.
Councilor Hamel.
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Yes. Next one is old business. It's order number 20092. It's an act on the new request for the following marijuana establishment licenses. Before I read these, just as a point of information, we did have a public hearing on this list last time we met. So this is just going through the normal cycle of public hearing, and now it's up for approval. Those are Main Holdings LLC located at 10 Snow Canning Road for medical marijuana cultivation facility. Number 2 is Calico Cannabis LLC located at 10 Snow Canning Road for medical marijuana cultivation facility. And number 3 is Grove Street Farms located at 10 Snow Canning Road for medical marijuana cultivation facility. Number 4 is Shauna Ray Tomlinson located at 20 Snow Canning Road for a medical marijuana cultivation facility. Number 5 is Absolute Healing located at 20 Snow Canning Road for a medical marijuana cultivation facility. Number 6 is High Seas Provisions located at 20 Snow Canning Road for a medical marijuana cultivation facility. And finally is Main Labs LLC located at 71 Pleasant Hill Road for a medical marijuana manufacturing facility. Tom, before I go to the public, do you want to?
I have nothing, but Liam Gallagher is here. I'm not sure if you wish to promote him. Perhaps he can just give you a sense of what's to come.
Liam, you're all set if you don't want to speak.
Sure. So as the council may recall, this is now the 4th batch of applications. This will, if approved this evening, that will represent 24 approved marijuana establishment licenses. Coming down the pike, I expect anywhere from 5 to 7 that are either in hand or I expect to be forthcoming. And again, those will be, some will be adult use manufacturing, some will be adult use cultivation, some will be medical cultivation, and some of those licenses that either have come in or I expect to come in will be actual represent migrations from the medical cultivation to adult use. So again, not necessarily an increase in cultivation space or operations, just that transition that I expect we'll see quite a lot of over the next year.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Liam before I go to the public? Councilor Johnson?
Liam, where exactly is 71 Pleasant Hill Road? I took a ride down there a few days ago and I found 69 and 73. We couldn't find 71.
It's right between them.
Okay, so
No,
What I will say, Councilor Johnson, is that the building is not marked very well from the road. There's a small 71 noted in, I believe, the upper right-hand corner of an otherwise bare sign. I believe we flagged that as something that they might want to look into in terms of more clearly demarcating it.
Okay, all right. So I guess I was at the right place then. Thank you.
I think you're onto it.
My apologies, Councilor Johnson, for the wise remark. Is there any other questions for Liam? Okay, thank you, Liam. Before we go to us, is there any members of the public that would like to speak to this? If you want to go ahead and raise your hand. I do not see any, so I will take a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Councilor Gleason?
Yes, I will be voting no, as I have on all of these, but it is no reflection on the job that the town is doing, going through the process to get these up according to the ordinance. I just still have some questions and concerns related to how we've rolled this out. And so I just wanted to explain since I'm voting no, but I did want to congratulate the town on all the work that they're doing to try to do this at the highest quality possible.
Thank you. Any others? Okay, Tom, you want to call the vote?
Councilor Calucci?
Yes.
Councilor Hayes?
Yes.
Councilor Gleason?
No.
Councilor Katarina?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes. Okay, order number 20093 is an act on the request to approve the proposed TIF CEA policy as recommended by the Finance Committee. And before I take public discussion, comment on it, Peter, you want to tee it up for everybody? Hold on, let me unmute you, Peter, here. Or can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think we did have, this did come up. We had a workshop on it the last time we met. There were some minor changes to some of the language I think everybody has seen and is okay with. This is really an attempt just kind of create a process and a blueprint of as we move forward and we may have applications for more CAs, that we have some criteria by just which to kind of help developers know what the criteria is and what we're looking for, and also help councils down the road have some at least a starting point where there's more objectivity to how we may arrive at a decision. So I think with that, as I said, we did have a workshop on it the last time we met. We made some minor just language changes, and I think, Chair Johnson, I'll leave it at that unless anybody has any questions.
Perfect. Anybody, any questions for Peter? Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, I remember that workshop. I thought we left that workshop with the agreement that somebody was going to model WEX through the point structure. Was that done? Do you know?
Councilor Johnson? Yeah, I was just going to say it's begun. I do not have that completed. So I apologize for that. I just couldn't turn it around in time.
Okay. No. Thank you.
Good. Any others? Okay, before we take it on, anybody in the public like to speak to this item? Just go ahead and raise your hand. I see none. So with that, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Perfect. Any discussion? Councilor Katarina.
Yeah, I believe the last time we met, I expressed that I did have some concerns about some portions of this or the overall intent of it. As you know, it's somewhat redundant and the potential for limitation on some creativity in times when we need to be creative. However, the discussion that we had last week and some more thoughts that I've done on it, thinking and conversations with others, I will support it, and I will support it because, you know, as long as councils are not required to necessarily follow this, if it doesn't make sense to do so. So I will be supporting this evening, but with those caveats.
Thank you. Any others? Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as Jean Marie. I've sat through a lot of TIF meetings, even before I was on the council. I had attended some of the finance committee meetings, and I thought it was overly detailed, burdensome, but it's really evolved. And I think the discussion last week it kind of sealed it for me in that, yeah, you know, it's part of our duty to try to help future councils avoid some of the difficulties that we may have come through. And I think that this does a pretty good job of giving some guidance for what is inherently a non-structured or not typical process, right? CEAs don't come up all the time and they're never all the same. Then it's not a vanilla type of item. So I think this policy does a pretty good job of that. And it's a guide. And if it doesn't make sense to use it for a unique situation that comes up, then the future council certainly has that option to do. So good job, everybody pulling it together. I know, Peter, you've done a lot of work helping move this through the process over the past year. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any others? No? Yeah, I'll just add, I was on rules and policy when this thing had its first birth. And then I believe like 8 months later, I ended up on finance committee where this was in its infancy. And I think this product is infinitely better than what I had seen at rules and policy and at finance. So I wasn't really tracking what happened between now and then, but I just know that I'm happy with the results. So, so I think this is I was worried it was going to be a camel, right? A horse done by committee, right? But I actually think it got better as it went through more committees and more people. And I believe, Peter, you were after rules and policy. I think your hand was involved in it for the entire time. So kudos to everybody for getting it done. So, with that, I think it's on the table. So Tom, you want to call a vote?
Councilor Clucci?
Yes.
Councilor Hayes?
Yes.
Councilor Gleisteen?
Yes.
Councilor Katarina?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes. Sorry. Order of business number 20097 is an act on the following request pursuant to Title 23 MRSA 3025 and the requirements of Section 4 of the Scarborough Street Acceptance Ordinance as recommended by the town engineer's memo for Kennebago Drive, Sawgrass Drive, and Sumac Lane. And Tom, do you want to
Yeah.
give us an introduction?
Yes, you did a similar, took a similar action at your last meeting. We do have a street acceptance ordinance that articulates the different requirements that we require to accept a street. It involves very detailed construction standards. In most cases, developers will propose this at the time of planning board approval, that's their intent. And so they build starting in day one with that as their intent. The ones before you this evening are exactly that case. The town engineer is the one responsible for seeing this through from planning board all the way to this point, and she's provided memorandums in support of both of these applications.
Thank you. Any questions for the town engineer before I take comments from the public? Councilor Hamel?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions on this.
Should I bring Angela in? Do you want me to bring Angela in?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead with your question. I'll bring her in. So.
Yeah, these questions are really for Angela, and I'm just trying to get my arms around the trigger and the time frame for this. The streets get built, and then there's some period of time between then and when the town accepts them to maintain them. So I was wondering if Angela could give us an idea of, is this, what is the typical time frame, and does this fall within that? So there was that question. And I recall there were some other issues in this development that I wanted to ask about that I don't know if they had to do with streets or not. So those two questions.
Okay, so let's go with the first one first. Angela, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear
Okay.
me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, these are two very different subdivisions in the fact of the timing. So it's understandable you have questions about that. Kennebago was one that was actually constructed before I came to work for the town of Scarborough. This is a pretty old subdivision that's been sitting out there. Unfortunately, it just got lost between the cracks, and with the town starting to plow it, we collect trash, those type of things. It was more about recently myself working with Public Works to try to clean up all of these. We found that Kennebago was never actually accepted through council. And so I've been working back through the developer and working with their surveyor to try to clean up all those loose ends, which include as-builts and a lot of deeds and those things, which is a little more difficult the longer that gap is. So we're trying to do some lessons learned and kind of keep this rolling with the newer subdivisions. Sawgrass is the other one, which has 2 streets. Those were a process of the developer deciding to, I think he built out each house one at a time. It took some time to do that. And so there's no real set timing for the completion. So that project did take longer through construction. And then we worked with the developer as well as the residents to make sure all the I's were dotted and T's crossed to get the documentation in front of you.
Okay. And then Angela, if I could, I just had a follow-up on that. I seem to recall there were some drainage and septic issues of some sort in that development. Do I have that right? Number one, and number two, if so, have those all been sort of remedied and resolved to the satisfaction of the residents?
Yeah, in the Sawgrass, there was an incident with the sewer system. I think it was about a year ago that got resolved. I know the residents have been communicating with myself as well as the developer and with their concerns. And so we've gone through in quite a lot of detail, I would say, on this Sawgrass subdivision to make sure that we have the required pieces, I guess, at the end of this. And that's why I am recommending at this point to accept it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Any others? Thanks, Angela. I'm going to boot you and bring it to the public. Does anybody in the public like to speak? I see none. So can somebody put it on the table, please?
So moved.
On the floor. I guess on the floor. Right? Any discussion amongst ourselves?
So was there a second?
Yeah, there was. I'm sorry. It was Peter seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I apologize. And you want to call the vote, Tom?
Councilor Clutzi,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Glystein,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina,
Yes.
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Yes. Up next is order number 20098. It's an act on the request from the school department to utilize the undeveloped land, formerly the water tower property, adjacent to the high school for the purpose of constructing a storage facility. And Kate or Todd, do you guys, either one of you want to introduce it? All right, Todd, I'm going to bring you in here. Todd, do you want to share a screen or anything, or you just want to do it verbally?
I can just do it verbally if that's okay.
Yep, absolutely. We'll probably ask you some questions after. Yep.
Yep. The garage, I'm calling it a garage, about 2,000 square feet, is really designed to store a variety of things that have been part of the COVID equipment / protective gear and everything from IT to extra furnishings that we've had to move out to accommodate social distancing in our schools. And as you might recall, last budget season, we had a garage requested that did not pass the budget. And eyed that same location on the main campus because it's convenient to the school. In this particular case, COVID has thrown an additional whole series of work for our maintenance crew in that we are the central receiving for the district, and we are receiving all of the new technology that IT has been required to get for remote learners and hybrid learners and so forth. We have become a mini Amazon warehouse, shall we say, in the high school, storing all of the extra protective equipment for the district, and we distribute it from there. And as I said, we have excess furnishings that we just are currently renting sort of construction trailers for, if you will, to pile up in there. So this is a very basic 40 by 50 garage, cement floor, very modest heat just to keep it above freezing. Drive in, drive out, 2 overhead doors and a couple of windows for some natural light. It will have electricity in it for lighting. And my thinking is that initially we would probably, because most of the stuff resides in our high school right now, we would migrate some of our heavier equipment into the garage and use it as a snow operations area this year, just because we aren't going to have time to move that volume of stuff over to that garage. And eventually, we're hoping that COVID ends someday in our future, and the garage could be continued to be used for additional storage, which we have needed for quite some time.
Thanks, Todd. Any questions for Todd? Councilor Johnson?
Yeah, I don't know if Todd's the right person to ask the question. I understand there's a delivery date of 12/30 to use this money. Could you explain what that means? Is that you or is that somebody else?
I just know that that's a date that was given by the coronavirus relief funds. Kate Bolton might be able to better explain that and why that date is. I think it has something to do with the fact that it's federal money.
Yep.
But Kate,
I just pulled you into the meeting. I apologize. So.
Hi, guys. So this is Kate Bolton. Yeah, Todd's absolutely right. What's happened is that the grant funds that are coming to the school districts across the state were provided by the federal government with a drop dead date of December 30. And I know everybody's saying, well, there's 31 days in December, but the government in its wisdom uses the 15th and the 30th. So any purchase of product, equipment, service with that money needs to be in the hands of the purchaser by the 30th with a little bit of fine print.
Okay, so the building doesn't really have to be complete. It has to be paid for. Is that correct? Keep it simple.
It actually has to be complete. It has to be built. Or it has to be at least past the straight face test that there's a building there. They want to see the actual building in place.
Okay, and aren't you required also to go through the planning board? for this?
Yes. Yes, and I'm in that process right now with the planning board, and they give an advisory opinion, I believe at their next meeting on the 16th.
On the 16th.
I think, if that's the correct date. Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong there.
And so I'm assuming you've secured a developer that says they can put a building in soup to nuts in 45 days.
Yes. That's what they have told us.
Okay, and if you don't mind, I'll just continue with that. If you don't make the 30 days, let's say they're real rigid, and sometimes they can be, and you're not done, what does that mean? Does that mean?
As far as the funding is concerned, the Department of Education are the folks who are working with us to distribute the money to the school departments, and they really want us to succeed with this stuff.
Yep.
So they've kind of been negotiating with the comptroller of the state and the feds. And the latest guidance that we got was that if we had a good faith agreement with a vendor that their product would be delivered by December 30, and then some crisis arose to push that off schedule, that they would still allow the expenditure.
Oh, okay.
So we do have a little bit of a fail-safe there.
Okay, and one other thing, did you happen, I was looking at the master plan at our complex, and there was no other place you could that this would fit? I am just thinking, you know, the complex itself is, I just have this vision of a steel building up beside the high school that will look more like a light industrial building. So there was no other venue to put that in the complex?
That was a location of convenience, obviously, because distributing the equipment and items is really centralized at the high school for all of the 6 schools.
Right.
There was an additional consideration of potentially the transportation yard, but I was not sure of how the former fueling station was left. That was the only other place, and that would be significantly further out of the way for us, but certainly not out of the question.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. Councilor Caterina?
Thank you for bringing that up, Ken, Councilor Johnson, regarding location, because my big concern with this whole thing is not so much, you know, the building and whatever. I understand that you need that, but, you know, that's prime real estate right there. And I don't want to see a shed there or a garage. I know in the past, at one point when we were looking at, you know, hockey rink or whatever, I just think that's not a good location for it. So I don't think I would support this unless there was an alternative location for it, just because I think it's a poor choice of location. Not a good use of that space.
Thank you, Peter. Councilor Hayes, excuse me.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure where this is deriving. I have a couple of questions. One, the way the order is written, it sounds like the decision in front of us is just if that lot of land is a, you know, can be used for that. I don't know. I'm just curious about I think I share both Councilor Johnson's and Councilor Caterina's. Is that the highest and best use of that lot of land? That is a prime real estate spot. It's right there close to Route 1. I had at one point thought we had alternative uses. We were thinking about that, including some affordable housing. So I kind of echo, is that really, I know it's convenient, but is it really the best use of all the municipal land we have available? That's one concern. Second concern, nobody knows. I know through the budget process, it sounds like this was originally a $275,000 sort of building for housing and keeping the dump truck inside. And I think it was suggested that the Public Works right now has a lot of available space. They have a couple of extra equipment bays. I'm just wondering if this is the highest and best use of that land and the best use of the funds. So I would be curious about how the $4 million funds are what other competing uses could there be for that money? I know we are concerned about, the House of Lights and some of the structure and infrastructure we have set up to kind of also take care of the kids that are in between. I don't think we have the enrollments we thought. Could some of those, so I would like to get a better sense of the $4 million that's available. What are some of the other sources of use of funds? And so I'm not sure I have enough information tonight to say, yep, go forward on that specific piece of land.
Thank you, Peter. Should I, before we go further, should I put this on the floor so we can debate it? Want to do that? Okay. So real quick, I'll just take a quick pause. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Okay, sorry, that way we can, are there any questions for Todd and Kate, or do we want to talk amongst ourselves? I just want to make sure, because
I think Peter just asked a question.
Oh, Peter, I'm sorry. Did you want Kate to recap the $4 million question? I apologize.
I mean, two questions. One, I mean, the bigger question would be just, is there other availability, and has the public safety building been checked out as a alternative that we don't have to build a structure on prime land? So I guess the specific question at this point is, what other alternatives have been considered to meet the need without necessarily utilizing that lot of land?
Okay, thank you. I apologize there. Okay, Kate or Todd, can you respond?
I have not heard that there's extra space at the public safety building. That being said, it hasn't been offered to me, but I have not gone investigating and asking Chief Thurlow or Chief Moulton. Maybe Tom Hall could speak to that, because I'm not up to speed on that public safety building. I didn't think that was even an option for us. So my apologies for not knowing.
So I'm going to jump in real quick we did discuss the idea of parking a truck in one of the bays at public safety, but we're not really talking about a truck anymore. We're talking about mountains of cleaning equipment, personal protective equipment, technology equipment, which is now kind of being stored in unclimate controlled containers. And so one of the reasons why we wanted to do this through the coronavirus relief funds was because of the materials that we've been purchasing with that $4 million, the equipment we've been purchasing with that $4 million, and the equipment that we've needed to move out of the schools in order to be able to have school with the social distancing requirements that we need to follow. To Peter's point, I can certainly share I have shared, I believe, the budget documents that tell what is in our applications for the 2 coronavirus relief funds. Have you folks seen those?
Not sure that we have. At least I'm not sure I've seen them.
That's certainly something that I can email out to you. They're posted on our website. They were part of our school board conversations at our last meeting. So I don't necessarily think I wouldn't want to take all of your time to read the entire application to you, but I can certainly share some of the things that are in the application. But I'm not sure how to address your question about the prime real estate.
Well, I guess as a follow-up question, hopefully we will see an end to COVID at some point. Maybe not soon, but at some point, let's hope. What will happen to that space when you don't need to store those supplies you're referencing and referring to? What is going to be use of that garage building at that site?
Well, we'll still be needing to store the technology supplies, because the things that we've purchased will either be in classrooms or they'll be in storage, and our tech department is kind of at capacity right now. So that would be a piece of it. And then the other piece would be to continue to store facilities and maintenance equipment. We're purchasing a lot of outdoor equipment, benches and tents and things for outdoor learning. And I'm not sure that's going to go away. That seems to be a really popular piece of our current education model. So it would continue to be a facilities space, and I guess we would morph depending on what the pandemic is doing to us in terms of what we need for equipment.
Kate, if the desire or need for the STEM lab at the high school continues the way it did last year, and the request comes forward to create space within the high school to do that, the space they're eyeing is the garage that we currently use for facility storage. So we would be basically just moving in to the newer garage and giving up our current garage again once, hopefully, as Peter said, this COVID thing comes to an end.
Right, and that takes, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to speak to the issue of what other uses might this plot of land be used for. The town did undertake and has a municipal facilities plan. That plan did not contemplate this building. It wasn't in discussion or under consideration at the time, but it did at that time catalog and include in the plan all of the expected school and municipal needs for the short, medium, and long term. The companion piece to that was a master plan that was developed that was informed by the facilities plan. And as I recall, as looking back through it as you're talking, the only proposed uses for that plot of land were parking. And parking to support specifically an ice rink. That was in conversation pretty hotly at the time. That has fallen away, and I don't expect it to come back anytime soon, if ever. So I'm not aware that there's any other proposed use for that land. I think I do have some sensitivity. There are some abutters immediately adjacent. And I know Todd, and I've made attempts myself to speak to some of them to make them aware and encourage them to be part of this public process with the planning board to the extent that they have interest or concern about what happens in their backyard. But to be succinct to the question, I'm not aware of any other legitimate use for this plot of land.
So I think Councillor Johnson had his hand up, but Jean Marie, were you going to follow up to that specific comment before I go to Councillor Johnson? Okay, so Councillor
Yes.
Johnson, right after this, go ahead. Yep.
Yep. I would just, I mean, I get everything, and I definitely want to see them be able to put up a spot. And okay, maybe we had that as a parking lot at some point, but I still think because of its location, because in real estate, it's location, 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 that it would be short-sighted of us to put a storage shed in that location. There've got to be other locations on the municipal campus that would be a better place for a storage shed. That's my only concern.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnson, do you have a question or a comment, either one?
No, I just wanted to get back to something Councillor Hayes mentioned, because it confused me. Peter, were you talking public works or public safety?
Excuse me, I meant public safety. I think when we had the budget review, that was a direct conversation. I had thought, because I think there's some built-in extra bays at the public safety building that are not being utilized now. It was really built there for growth in the future. I'm just thinking if we have a short-term need, because we don't know if COVID is a 5-year cycle or an 18-month cycle till a vaccine comes out, whether it's a better use of fund to get to some of the points that Councilor Katarina just suggested. If there is available space there, maybe it's better to wait and use that now and then calibrate what we do. That was my thought. And I thought there was supposed to be a conversation somewhere, around, even if that's available. And some of the other storage needs, I just like to know whether, there's some other space we could rent temporarily that would still take care of the needs without putting a building in that location, which I agree with Jean Marie, I think is a pretty prime real estate. And that I understand the town manager is reference to an older document, but times have changed and Scarborough's growing, and that is a unique spot right there.
Yeah, I do believe moving the tennis courts was also part of that master plan, if we wanted to use the current tennis court space. But okay, thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, the footprint of that property isn't sufficient to accommodate the current configuration, much less additional tennis courts, which is really the desire to add 2 more. So that's not a viable use at that location at any rate.
Okay.
I will say my recollection of the finance committee discussion really focused on the STEM lab. And also there was certainly conversation around purchase of a truck, a dump truck of some sort. I think there were members of the finance committee that inquired whether or not at least the truck could be parked at the public safety building. I'm not aware that Chief Thurlow or Chief Thurlow has offered that up as a viable option. It is true that there's additional capacity near term, but I would not at all suggest that we use the drive-through bays storing smaller items, if you will. Perhaps a rolling stock equipment is one thing because you can come and go quite easily, but using it for long-term storage of small items, I think is not a good use of that space. It was not what it was built for or designed for.
Councillor Hamel and then Councillor Clucci after Councillor Hamel.
Yeah, I think all the questions have been great and good discussion about this. My take on this is a little bit different. I know it seems like this may be, we're approaching this as an expedient, but it does seem that there is funding available for us to take advantage of. And, the school department has studied this from a facility standpoint and also in terms of current and future needs. And it does seem to me that's a legitimate reason for, why they would want to make this proposal. I think we're getting a little bit into the weeds here in terms of trying to discover the highest and best use and, should we have a hockey rink there? I mean, we've owned this property for a long time and it's surrounded by a parking lot on 3 sides, and the other part is it faces the high school. So, I don't really know what else we would do there. And furthermore, I'm not sure what, in our magnificent wisdom, would be the recommendation for what that ought to be. So I think we have, a question that's somewhat time bound, and I don't want to sound short term in my nature and outlook, but it does seem like the department's, done their due diligence, has thought through this and have a legitimate need and see some optionality, around this structure. And we've kind of separated out the truck idea and the truck storage idea. So I think we're getting into stuff where we really, maybe, our advice, may not be necessarily required or really helping to solve the question before us.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Clucci.
Yeah, I've tossed some questions out on this one as well. While I understand the particular plot here is undeveloped and isn't big enough to support tennis courts or an extra couple of tennis courts, you have 2 huge parking lots on either side. So if you take up this middle spot with a building, a permanent structure, you're limiting any future opportunity for what happens on either side. And I guess where I get stuck is we go through a multi-year, very expensive process to catalog our needs and come up with a cohesive master plan that helps us take off small bites as we go along. And now we're kind of just saying, oh, well, just throw a building here. Well, and then next year we might throw a building there. And you wind up with a dysfunctional network or municipal campus at the end of the day. I just disagree with that approach, I guess. I feel like what we discussed tonight is there's some undocumented needs that haven't been incorporated into the facilities master plan. There were some storage and maintenance needs that had been documented. I think a 14,000 square foot facility for community services. I feel like we're trying to fix a short-term need because there's available funding with what is really a long-term need. We need more space to store stuff. I don't think that need's going to go away. Like Kate and Todd had said, what I would prefer is that, can we collaborate on a storage facility that meets more than just one particular need. 2,000 square feet is not big. That's 5 trailers. You already have 2 trailers on the site filled up. You're going to gain 2 trailers worth of space, and you're going to put equipment in there. I just think you're going to be it's going to be full before you know it. And I think it actually would fit better in the industrial park for this type of structure, although you do have a good point with the convenience factor. There were 4 sites identified on the facilities master plan for this type of structure, and I'd be okay using one of those. I don't know if you guys have looked at that. I guess that might be a question for Todd. I think it's on page 16 of the facilities master plan. If one of those 4 sites that are identified, it was identified for a different purpose for the community services structure, but if those would meet your needs. And then I just wanted to bring to light, this did raise a question for me. When I read the charter, I thought that the town council was to approve all expenditures through the budget process or through an amendment or a separate order. And when it comes to the schools, we actually take any amendment and has to go to a budget validation referendum. So I did ask the question of the town manager, and this was just an hour or 2 before the meeting. He did respond, and as has Kate, and we're trying to understand because this is federal funding and it's time sensitive, what is our role in this process? And so I don't have an answer for what it is today, but it seems like this is like bonus funds that haven't necessarily gone through the same vetting process that some of our other spending does. So that's I guess those are my concerns, is that I agree this is a potentially very useful property on the municipal campus that I would hate to just put a shed that hasn't been fully vetted or even designed. I mean, the plans that are out there, and they're included with the packet, they haven't been stamped by an engineer or an architect. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, and this is kind of how I did it. I rushed into something that, for one reason or another, seemed to make a lot of sense, and I just don't think that we're ready to be building a building in the next 45 days on this site. So, but I understand the need, and I don't think the need's going away, and I think we should try to solve the need as it exists with other similar uses or needs.
Councilor Gleason?
So I think this has been asked, but I didn't quite understand the answer. Is there another place that this can go? And would that be possible to get a plan and to get that approved within 45 days? Even if it's not as convenient? And where would that be?
Yeah, thanks. Todd, did you want to respond to Councilor Gleason's question, which I also think was Councilor Clucci's question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize for not being familiar with the other locations on the municipal campus where Councilor Clucci suggested there might be a space for a garage of this nature, but I had suggested earlier that the transportation yard where all the buses are parked is more of an industrial park location. I had looked quickly at the site. I did not talk to the town manager about this. I had only spoken to him about the spot we're talking about. So it is centrally located in the town. It would definitely change what is stored there, but we could certainly make that work. And if that is more appealing and appetizing, then I'm sensitive to that. And I just know that we have a short time frame to get this done, and that's my goal, trying to get it done. And I don't want to make a hasty decision, as Councilor Clucci suggested. I'm sensitive to all those things. I'm hoping that we can solve a problem that will help us in the long run, and am open to other locations that would be supported by the group.
Councilor Gleason, do you want to continue or?
No, that
Okay, all right,
answered my
perfect.
question.
Thank you. Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, if they could move it, I could definitely support it. And I think it may make better sense where they're talking about in that bus area in an industrial area for this type of building.
Todd or Kate, can I just, I'd like to ask a couple questions. And Kate, you're gonna have to refresh my memory. The STEM lab was an ask this past year, and then we eliminated the STEM lab. Is that correct? It was an ask that didn't make it through?
That's true, yes.
And so if we put this garage in the proximity that you're speaking of, is the suggestion that that STEM lab isn't necessarily going to be an ask again because we'll make room to have that STEM lab, or the ask would be smaller?
The ask would be the same to actually reconfigure that learning space in the high school into a STEM lab. So there were two parallel projects. One was to construct a STEM lab out of what's currently a garage. And the second was to construct a garage to put the stuff into that's in there now.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, and I apologize for the cynical nature of this question, but would we run the risk if we approve this, would we run the risk of in 90 days, realize we have a $50,000 overage and that wasn't part of the federal application, and then we're doing an off-budget ask for $50,000 because we're having such a severe winter? And I don't say that as flip as it sounds, but it's an honest question.
Are you talking about the construction costs?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is let's say, I think you guys have funding for 275,000. If this project comes in at 315,000, are we opening up a future decision of a $30,000 ask off budget cycle because there's no way to go back through your process and get the 30,000 extra? Are we running any risk there?
Like we went through that with the portables.
Correct.
We have to do it.
Todd, what we did with the portables, same thing. Are we running the risk for what we did with the portables?
Yeah, there would, if we were going to pick that bus yard, there would have to be some more soils work, because I'm unfamiliar with what's the quality. I know they're right sort of in that marshy area, and I just don't know. I know the intent was to have a 4-foot in-ground foundation that comes back out to support the garage. So I would probably have to do a little bit of earthwork research, shall we say, to make sure that transportation lot wouldn't incur a lot of extra costs to make the site worthy of that garage, if I might.
Yeah, Todd, I think I mistook. I'm talking about the current proposal in the current 2 acres that you guys are asking for. Are we running the risk of, if there is an overage, which I think right now is a reasonable thing to explore. So if there is a monetary shortage, is that possible? Is that a possibility that we're looking at you guys coming back and saying, hey, this structure, completely the way you're asking for it, everything right now, are we opening the door to making a $20,000 decision later or a $30,000 decision later because construction costs are more than the $275,000 that you guys have for funding?
I would say, Paul, that is very unlikely because this is a shed and not a classroom. And we don't have the same kind of requirements for providing instructional space for students that we did in the portables.
Okay.
So I think that the short answer is that we can provide a scope of work that fits into the budget that's provided to the vendor and tell them that their cap is this number and they give us what they can give us.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was looking for. My third question is, I know it's a storage shed or it's a garage. To Kaluch's point, it's very small. Is there concern about the increase, not traffic on the actual roads, but traffic between the shed and the schools in the parking lot with the kids being newly licensed drivers? Is there going to be more heavy equipment in the parking lot to move that stuff around, or is that not a concern at all? And you can tell me it's not a concern at all. That's
it's not a concern that I have, Paul. It's
okay.
It's actually a very minimally used parking lot for teaching staff. And so the cars arrive in the morning and then they sit there all day until the end of the day and then they leave. So there's not a lot of transactional traffic that takes place in that particular lot.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. Is there any other questions for Todd or Kate? Okay, guys, I'm just gonna boot you guys out as we wrap this up. Thank you very much, both of you. Councilor Johnson? Oh, I think he froze. Uh-oh. I think they all froze. Peter's back.
I have a question. I'm confused.
You were just frozen, that's all. Go ahead, you have the floor.
Okay, how was this done, Tom? It's just a verbal agreement, you're frozen, or you don't understand my question?
You're still frozen, but so you're gonna have to repeat it one more time, sorry. Oh, that's a good one.
Let me
I
try
think
one
you're,
more.
yeah,
What is the mechanism to
I think I
transfer
understand.
the land for the school to
perfect.
use?
All school facilities sit on town property. This is really just a recognition that there's some different use being proposed on town-owned property, and it's by right the town council's prerogative to allow that or not. But technically, legally speaking, the town of Scarborough owns all property where all school facilities sit. So there's no change of ownership. It's just
Okay.
authorizing use.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, and I apologize. My question is, what does a vote tonight mean?
Well, actually, can I piggyback on that for a second? Because I feel like if there's, to Clucci's point, I don't think I'm interested in us trying to come up with an alternative site right
Right.
now on the fly. So to me, it's a matter of we either table it or we say no to it. And if they want to resubmit with a different location, which as chair and vice chair, we could gather everybody's thoughts and transfer them to Tom through that staff. And if they want to resubmit, we do have a special meeting next Thursday.
Yeah.
If I might suggest, this is going to the planning board already, I believe, right? This week?
It is. I think it's quite likely that the planning board chairman will take this under as an advisory matter, and he has the prerogative to do that.
Could we ask them to report back to us? Is there, if they have a better place or what they're
That's really not their job.
Yeah.
They're really looking at the mechanics of the site plan, how it works, traffic and the like.
Okay.
So I don't think they'd be comfortable with that request.
Okay.
To the chairman's question, time is of the essence here. So a week matters, quite literally. And I think we are quickly reaching the point of no return. And I don't think anyone wants to start a project that we know we can't finish, frankly. So it may be best to table this. I would recommend you don't push it any further than your meeting next Thursday. That will allow staff to work with school staff to answer some of these questions and come back to you. But I don't think pushing it further is practically something that's viable at this point.
And I'll take this opportunity just to say the plan would be, we were going to have a special meeting this coming Wednesday, but it's Veterans Day. So I was hoping tonight to just get some consensus that Thursday would work next week instead of Wednesday. So I know it's off topic, but just to timeline wise. Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table this order until our next meeting, whichever day it is, whether it's the 11th or the 12th.
Can you, let's make the motion for the November 12th.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll amend it to make the, to table until November 12th.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and there's no discussion with the table, so I'm just going to call the vote.
Councilor Calucci,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes,
Yes.
Councilor Gleisteen,
Yes.
Councilor Caterina,
Yes.
Councilor Johnson,
Yes.
Councilor Hamel,
Yes.
Chairman Johnson.
Yes. Okay, thank you, everybody. Moving on to order number 20099, which is an act on a request to accept a grant from the Center of Tech and Civic Life in the amount of $9,450 for upgrading election technology and authorize the town manager to sign in all documents relating to this grant.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You may recall last month, we came to you with a grant of similar amount, 8,000 something as I recall. That was really to cover election-related postage and some protective equipment for election volunteers and staff, and I think even some staff time, frankly. Since then, we've found out that there's additional funds available, and I inquired to our town clerk whether there was any other use that she could consider. She did say that she had some technology needs that she was planning on advancing as soon as next budget year. And so what this is, I believe, 8 laptops dedicated to election use, a scanner and a printer for envelopes in particular for the early and the absentee votes. So we're here back before you again to accept this grant award so we can move forward with this purchase.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Discussion? Councilor Gleason?
Are these 8 additional laptops or are these 8 replacement laptops?
Replacement.
Okay.
Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, I know I talked to Tody about this and I think it's excellent. We were a little surprised we didn't get more money when we saw what other towns had gotten. So I was very pleased to see Tody take the initiative to say, hey, we need more money here in Scarborough. So I think it's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Clucci?
Yeah, I think great job by Cody. Tody fighting for every penny. This kind of brings back it reminds me of the topic I brought up with the last item in that we have funds coming to the town and you're bringing it to us for approval. It's kind of an out of budget authorization, I guess. This feels like the right process to me. And I just wanted to bring that up because I look forward to getting clarity on, with COVID relief funds, what is the appropriate process for the council to follow for those things as well.
Yeah, this is before you because the council needs to accept the grant. And then with that acceptance, then it's my responsibility to administer it within the confines, however detailed or not they are, that acceptance is made. The analogous point of that to the last agenda item would be presumably the Board of Education would do take a similar action, except grant funds on behalf of the school district. They are truly a recipient of a federal grant, and they do that quite often off budget.
That's good to know. Good. Any others? Okay, Tom?
Councilor Clucci?
Yes.
Councilor Hayes?
Yes.
Councilor Gleason?
Yes.
Councilor Caterina?
Yes.
Councilor Johnson?
Yes.
Councilor Hamel?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Order number 2100 is the act on the request to certify the results of the municipal elections held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020.
Chairman Johnson, I wonder if you could share the screen and show the agenda. The agenda was updated with a memo from the town clerk late this afternoon.
Do you know if it's at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
It's right behind the item.
Oh, that's the grant. Bear with me. Right here.
So this action is customary. The town council must certify the local municipal and referendum election. Most notably, you don't see any of the state ballot or state office positions here. That's not your responsibility. That's for the Secretary of State's office. So we did have 3 different local races. First for town council, we had 5 candidates running for 3 offices. And if it pleases the council, I can read down through these.
Sure.
Candidate Jonathan Anderson received 6,706 votes. Jean Marie Caterina, 7,551 votes. John Clucci, 7,391 votes. Nicholas McGee, 5,907 votes. Fryla Trampinian, 5,493 votes, and there were 12,492 blanks. So for the town council election, Jonathan Anderson, Jean Marie Caterina, and John Clucci were successful. For Board of Education, there were 3 candidates for 2 seats. First, John Dittmer received a total of 6,330 votes. Leon Casayonis received 7,615 votes. And Mary Shannon Lindstrom received 7,422 votes. There were 8,994 blanks. And so for that race, both Leanne Casayonis and Mary Shannon Lindstrom were successful. For trustees of the sanitary district, I believe there were 3 seats open and 3 candidates. So first we had Jason Greenleaf, total votes 10,314. Ben McDougal, 9,803, and Ruth Summers, 10,266. All 3 candidates were successful. On the back are some interesting statistics. Well, I move past the referendum question. Question 1 was for bond approval for purchase of a ladder truck. The yes votes were 7,556, no votes 6,491, with 1,133 blanks. Yes votes carried. So in total, there were 19,134 active voters on our voter registration list. This does not include same-day registrations, and I can attest that registration booth was brisk yesterday. So conservatively, I would say there were several hundred additional registrants yesterday at the polls. There were a total of 15,180 votes cast, of which 2,784 were done in person yesterday at the polls. And the other 12,729 votes were done by absentee. Incidentally, that was a return rate on the absentees of 98%, quite impressive. And in total, we had 80% turnout at the election, which is just a tremendous number. I dare say we'll be challenged to meet that number again, but Scarborough has always enjoyed some of the best turnout, and this did not disappoint. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I offer that up for your consideration and certification.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I did have a question.
Sure.
The town manager, if I may. So the number, I was astounded by the number of how many active voters there are, 19,134. And we refer to them as active voters. So how do people become active on the registration list? And then how do we maintain the list over time? Like has anyone ever become inactive on the list?
I'm afraid I'm woefully unqualified to answer that question. I won't even hazard a
All right,
guess.
so I would love to get an answer to that question at some point, but I know our experts taking a well-deserved break this evening, and yeah.
That choice of word is purposeful, active, and I honestly don't know what that means in this context.
Great. But impressive numbers, and I think it's a real credit to town staff to be able to manage this kind of volume and in such an efficient way. So thank you.
Any others? No? I will just say congratulations to all the winners and to all the people that ran. And we look forward to seeing Mr. John Anderson with us, I believe, next week. So with that, Tom, do you want to call the vote?
Yes, Councilor Clucci.
Yes.
Councilor Hayes.
Yes.
Councilor Gleisten.
Yes.
Councilor Katarina.
Yes.
Councilor Johnson.
Yes.
Councilor Hamel.
Yes.
And Chairman Johnson.
Yes. Item number 9 is, item number 9 is non-action items. There are none. I'll ask you to raise your hand for item number 10, which is standing and special committee and liaison reports. Does anybody have any of those? If you want to raise your hand. There are none, so I will give my quick update. As I've tried to mention a couple times, we are looking to have a special town council meeting next Thursday, not Wednesday of next week, simply because Veterans Day is Wednesday. We would like a 6 p.m. start time. That agenda will now be to swear in John Anderson. It will also be if the garage has an update. I believe that has now been officially added to the agenda. Tom, I think we actually put this to actually appoint to go into executive session as well. So we will be going to an executive session to select candidates for the 2 ad hoc committees. And one thing I have floated to Dawn and John, simply because they showed up early today, is I would like input on a possibility of actually just approving our committees for the next year as well. That would be an effort just to get the committees approved and to move on. I have not spoken to John Anderson, so I will call him personally today. So, but just to have an idea, if you want to give me your input on whether that's good, bad, or in between. The rationale behind that would be there's usually about a month of downtime between committee meeting, regular town council meetings. So it feels like we take a month of not doing much. So this initiative would be, since there's pretty small turnover in the council, we can form the committees and hit the ground running or just continue our cadence. So again, I'm open. Yep. Go.
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question.
Yep.
What are you doing about the two of us? We also need to be sworn in again for a new term.
Oh, I guess you're getting sworn in too. I didn't know that. You don't
Oh,
just
yeah.
keep it rolling.
No.
Okay, with that, we have council member comments. Any council member comments?
You didn't answer my question.
We're swearing you in too. Councilor Gladstein.
Yeah, but that means I have to come there, right?
Oh, I don't know. Well, let's ask Tody. We'll ask Tody tomorrow.
I mean, yeah, if we could just figure that out.
Yeah, totally. I'm sorry. I didn't get why you're asking. Yes, we'll ask
Okay,
Tody. Yeah.
thank you.
Councilor Gladstein?
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate everyone who ran and those who were successful, including our two counselors that got reelected, and our newest counselor who will be sworn in next week, John Anderson. You know, it's a tough thing to do, to get out there, put your name out there. I think you leave a lot on the table. You put a lot into it, your own money, your own time. Maybe I think, John, was it this election you put blood into it with your injury, tears, et cetera. I think maybe a tear or two there, smiles. So I think it's not an easy job to get out there and run. And I congratulate everyone who ran and thank them. If you were not successful, the time you took to figure out positions and meet people and understand our town better during this process is valuable information to us as sitting councilors. And we would welcome your input and welcome your help with anything you're willing to help with in the town. I'd also like to acknowledge Peter Hayes. Peter, you served with honesty, integrity, common sense, financial expertise. You can throw numbers out like really quick when they just come right at you, which always amazed me. I always have to be a little slower and write stuff down. You have a deep understanding of our charter, our ordinances, and our processes and procedures. And you're going to be missed for all of these things and much more. And I just personally want to thank you for your 6 years of service. And I know many other residents feel the same because they have contacted me and many times and have spoken very highly of all of your input on the council and your years of dedication. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any others? Councilor Calucci.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the last part of that. Peter, 6 years is a long time and it's a lot of work. So thank you for your dedication to the town, and I hope you get to enjoy some time skiing this winter. And please stay in touch. Continue to share your thoughts and stay engaged in town activities. I think it's important for former councilors to keep active to some extent as well. And then I want to thank Scarborough voters. There's many different paths you can take to getting in one of these seats, and don't feel like you always have to follow what everybody else is doing. And I think the voters, I guess I'm honored to serve another term. It's been a very tiring year, so this is why I can appreciate 6 years for Peter. That's really an achievement, but I feel energized and ready to give it my best again. And thank you for everybody who supported me. I'm happy to see Jean Marie back, and I look forward to working with John. And, to Nick and Freyla, they ran great campaigns. I think, in today's world, we're so polarized that you can choose to focus on the things that we disagree on. And I think we've all disagreed on some pretty big topics. And sometimes that can blur your vision for the things that you really agree on. And I think one of the challenges of being in this seat is you really have to try to focus on where do we align and where can we accomplish something together. And I look forward to doing that with each of you.
Councilor Caterina?
Yeah, I'm going to echo all of that. I do want to thank the voters for reelecting me, putting your confidence in me. 6 years is a long time to serve, but I'm happy to step up for the next 3 years because I do think it's going to be some difficult times, particularly in the next year dealing with, the after effects of pandemic and whatever. So Thank you for allowing me to continue. I also want to thank everyone who ran. It was a good campaign. I think people did a great job getting their messages out there and being civil for the most part. And yes, Mr. Hayes, thank you so much for your 6 years of service. I know you and I didn't always agree, but that's how life is sometimes. But by God, you stuck it out for 6 years, and you did have some really good, some financial, intuition, and you brought a different viewpoint to things, which I think is always helpful. If everyone agreed with everyone else all the time, it'd be pretty boring. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any others? Counselor Johnson, excuse me, Counselor Johnson. I had to do it.
I'm actually seeing 3 of me on the screen. Does anybody else see 3 of me? Anyway. Peter, yeah, thank you for your service. I definitely admire that. And give us some thought. Do you want to come over and join a committee? We need some committee members. Give us some thought. Hey, good luck to you no matter what you do in life.
Thank you.
Peter, I'm going to give you a last word in case you want it, just as a heads up if you wanted to. So Counselor Hamel.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo all the comments that have been made, in particular about the folks who ran and won. We're building on some continuity, which I think is a good thing in some respects. I think we're also going to get some new thinking. And to Peter in particular, I know you've soldiered on during dark days in the minority for a long time. And I always admired your service during that time and looked up to you as a role model in terms of how you handled yourself during really difficult and challenging issues and settings. So we will miss you, and we thank you and appreciate all of the contributions you made over your many years of service. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 2 things. One, if anybody's watching the public, I think it's important to realize, or I just want to let the public know that Councilor John Clucci spent $0 on his campaign. So good for you. You won this town election spending $0. And for the record, I donated $50 to your campaign. So I expect some sort of, I don't know how that works, but it's a matter of public record.
Get a MAGA hat.
Yeah, right. Secondly, Mr. Hayes, just what I've known of you since we've been on the council, Don and I came in here together, and the first thing we dealt with was the Downs. And I think we can all say that the next 5 to 10 years of this town is going to be shaped through the lens of that deal. And I think we often talk about who was for things and who was against things. And I think you will freely admit that you might have been the naysayer more often than not. But I think what gets lost in this is why these things became better because of your input in the discussions that you had with us. And the Downs is right off the bat was a primary example. I think that we had about 2 weeks to vote on the Downs, and the CEA was improved. Actually, you're seeing it before your eyes because there was more put into the CEA about reporting out each year and having these check-ins. And that was a direct result from you inspiring me and Don to run, and Don flying back from Ireland, was it, to do this work. Second, the Pine Point Co-op is when you were chair, you ushered in the Pine Point Co-op. It might have flew on the radar for a lot, but that was an intense process. That was people that really held their livelihood near and dear to their heart. And then you had a private business owner who had a really good vision. And those 2 things were inherently against each other. And that deal has come through. We just voted on it and it went incredibly smooth. I think, again, you're not going to get a lot of recognition for that from everybody, but I think you've made those people's lives easier and better. And the fact that we just put that on autopilot is a testament to your leadership when you went through that process. After that, we dealt with Piper Shores. And if you think about the Piper Shores project initially, there was absolutely 0 land put into conservation. There was half the amount of money was expected to be put into affordable housing fund. And because of your leadership, and frankly, because of all of us being a little bit too skeptical, under you, we doubled the amount of money the town got for affordable housing. I believe we put 14 acres into conservation. And we actually reduced the amount of units that we're going to be putting there from 62 units to 50 units. WEX, the WEX deal. WEX deal is another example of maybe publicly you raise your hand, no, but I can tell you right now that we offered WEX $150,000 and it probably would have been $175,000 or $200,000 a year if you weren't on the council. Those are things the public doesn't see all the time, and those are things that you're not going to get credit for, but please accept this as me giving you credit for those. And lastly, I thought tonight was very apropos that you ended your council career with your TIF and your CEA policy. You saw something that you thought needed improvement, and by God, we just improved it. So government works. So if your goal walking into this adventure, Peter, was to leave this town and this council better than it was, and you walked out, then you can hold your head high, because I 100% think that you've done that, and you should be proud of yourself. So with that, Peter, did you want to say anything before I adjourn? I don't want to.
No, I mean, I'll be short and brief. I thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the words, and I'll echo the earlier comments. It was great to see the turnout in elections. People are engaged, which is really good. Kudos to all the candidates that run. I kind of know what the energy that it takes and how, put yourself out there, and congratulations to those that are embarking on a new journey. It's been a great 6 years. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of serve the town and work with the various councils as they've gone through. And you're right, politics isn't always a beautiful thing. It is sort of that middle grounds and exchange of ideas and finding things. So want to thank everybody in the community. Thanks everybody on the council. Tom, thanks. I've said it a couple times. I don't know how you keep us all sort of marching forward, but anyway, thanks everybody. Thanks to the fellow town council members. Thanks to the community, and good luck. As Councilor Caterina said, I think, the next couple of years, you've got lots of things on the plate. So it's in good hands, and good luck. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, second, third.
Todd, Tom.
I'm going to give Peter the second, just so
Yeah.
he lives in infamy.
Yeah.
Councilor Clucci,
Yes.
Councilor Hayes,
Yes.
Councilor Gleisteen. Yes. Councilor Caterina,
Yes.
Councilor Johnson,
Yes.
Councilor Hamel,
Yes.
and Chairman Johnson.
Yes. Good night, everybody.